Good morning, everybody. At least if you're on morning time, welcome to Watches with Dennis. I am Dennis, and I am here with my usual Saturday live stream. So today's topic, actually put this together really late. So some of you probably only saw this appear in about the last hour or so. And that's because I had so many links I wanted to build up. But I decided to kind of revisit a dress watch discussion. I know we talked about that relatively recently on a live stream. And so I wanted to go ahead and in this episode, actually go ahead and go over 25 different brands. I mean, models as well, obviously, but 25 different brands of dress watches that many of which I've not owned, but what I think are really worth considering if you are in the market for a dress watch. Now, the challenge, of course, is if you're in the market for a dress watch, the first question one has to ask is, well, how much do you want to spend on a dress watch? And so because of that, I've gone ahead and I've established 5 different tiers. So we've got 25 watches, 5 tiers, 5 per tier. We'll do a sub $500 tier, then we'll do 500 to 1,000. We'll do 1,000 to 5,000. These are all US dollars. 5,000 to 10,000, and then we'll end with 10,000 to $50,000. I'm looking at my little labels here, and I see I actually labeled the group originally. I'm editing my Chrome right now. You can't see it, but I'm editing it right now because I originally just said 10,000 to 100,000. But then when I looked, I saw I did actually keep it contained to 50. So I had to make one adjustment in order to ensure that that was the case. But at some point you become so absurdly priced that I mean, maybe some of you are spending that much on watches regularly, or maybe not regularly, but I just don't think there's a lot of need for that level of content. So that's what we'll be doing today. No real pre-recorded videos to discuss. I've released a couple of YouTube shorts just because they're so easy to throw together. Some close-up stuff on the Citizen dial, the AQ 4100. Did some regarding Breguet Classique. And speaking of dress watching, Breguet will show up later today in the video. Likewise, on the wrist today, because we're talking dress watches, I kept the one that I wore yesterday on the wrist. Well, it's not on the wrist right now, but this, excuse me, this will also, of course, make an appearance as a brand. It will focus, it may not, but this is the Alongenzona Longa 1. This is specifically, it's the 101.032. They do not make this reference anymore. It has been replaced by one with a superior movement. But these older ones go for, I mean, they're very expensive, but they go for quite a bit less than they did new. All prices that will be looked at, excuse me, sorry for my voice. All prices that will be looked at today will be MSRP prices from their websites, and link in the description already there. You can go and you can see every single model I'm going to talk about today. Hopefully Chrome doesn't crash. It took forever to put this together. That's pretty much it. So let me get caught up with the chat, and then we will just get going, because this is a lot of watches to go ahead and go through. And of course, I'll be interested in knowing what the chat thinks. I'll try and keep up with that as well. We'll see. I have roughly 1 hour hard stop, so we'll see how it goes. But good morning, Kevin. Welcome to the live stream. Glad you could be here. Tuna, thank you for being a 99-cent club member, and hello to you. Same to Rob. Good morning. Hope everyone enjoys the topic today. Dress watches are not a favorite of many people. However, they are a favorite of mine. So, the live stream kind of goes in the direction that I wanted to go in. Joe Bolt, glad you could make it. Glad to hear that you love to talk dress watches. So, all right, we're going to start with the sub $500 and we'll work our way up, because I think that's a logical progression. So here you go. Again, links to every single one of these, and they're not affiliate. I don't have affiliate links there. So they're not affiliate links. They just link to the website in some capacity, all to the watches that I'm going to show you. But I don't mean to point so much to a specific dial, colorway, or strap per se. It's just to give you some ideas. But the ones I've chosen all fall within the price ladder, which matters as we move further along, because sometimes it gets a little bit tricky to stay within a particular price range. So Citizen, we've talked Citizen from time to time. It gets a lot more attention lately, but almost always in the sports watch lineup. And their EcoDrive technology is used in a lot of watches. And in fact, they use it in dress watches. And the one that we've got here is a line that I wasn't particularly familiar with until I started working on putting this episode together, though I have looked at these before. And that is the Serato. So the Serato is an EcoDrive based watch. It's hour and minute only. So at least the model that I've chosen for you is. So that sort of leans into that traditional dress watch aesthetic. Blue is not the most traditional dial color for dress watches. However, I think it works really well. And you'll see I'll have a number of blue dial watches as examples as we move along here. But price wise, currently, they list sort of a base MSRP of $375. Currently, it's about 280 US dollars. Regardless, it falls easily within the price ladder. So, overall, I think this is a really good option if you are not hung up on having mechanical. Uh, if you want mechanical, we've got some other options. So let me jump to the next one. And I think I've got these by alphabetical order by brand within the price tiers, if you're curious. So we're not moving our way up linearly price wise from watch to watch. So again, here, the Orient Bambino. $285 currently as they show a slash through price of $430. I don't know if I've ever actually seen it listed at that price. The Bambino is the watch that I never talk about because everyone talks about it when they say, what's an affordable dress watch? And you often have heard me, if you've watched me a lot, I often make fun of that. This is like the one example watch YouTubers can give you is the Orient Bambino. However, from Orient, it is, I think, the best collection to look at if you're into dress watches. There are actually a lot of different ways that you can find a Bambino. In fact, there are some even now on their website, which I almost went with, quartz-powered ones without the date window. And I actually like it better overall without the date window, but you might want a date window. And a number of these dress watches I will show you will have date windows. And so I picked one, though, where I think the date window looks best. So I went with a white dial example here of the version 7, because essentially when they do the white dial, you get the color matching because the date discs by default are almost always white. And so you get that. But in this instance, I also was able to let you have the caliber F6724. So you actually have an automatic mechanical movement. Finishing is basically nothing. There'll be, there's some etching on the rotor, and that's it. But if you want mechanical and you want a dress watch, this is one of the best places to start. And that's why so many people recommend it. I just feel like there are others in the spectrum of price that we would want to cover. And that's why I've got, 3 other brands beyond the Citizen that I already told you about. So this would be one I would also suggest for those of you who want a dress watch and really want to keep it on the affordable end. However, Orient is owned by Seiko, and Seiko, while their prices have been creeping up, or maybe going up more than even creeping, we might say, over the last number of years, they do still have quite a few watches sub $500, and they're not all Seiko 5s. The Presage collection has a lot of options available under $500. This is the SRPE 43. It's currently priced at 425 US dollars. And much like the Orient, you're going to get a fairly restrained dial. This was actually far more playful, though, but easy to read. Numerals you could see. It does also still have the date window, and it is also an automatic movement. Movement finishing is really no better than what you would get on the Orient, which is to say none. However, obviously, the rotor is more colorful for the automatic winding. But anyway, sizing like 38.5 millimeters. It's under 12 millimeters thick. So this isn't going to win any awards or anything, but it's very, very reasonable to wear. Less than 46 millimeters lug to lug. This is going to fit most wrists. A lot of women would be able to wear this watch as well. You are going to get Hardlex as the crystal, but the Orient uses mineral glass. So they're basically the same there. Hardlex is like the proprietary Seiko version. You might prefer the 4R35 movement. I think spec-wise, the Bambino's F6724 has a tighter tolerance, like less deviation per day. However, I believe from most owners' experience, including my own limited experience with Seikos and Orients, the Seikos tend to come out of the box better within the range than what the Orients do. So you'll probably have better timekeeping, I'll postulate, on the Presage than you would the Orient, even though it sounds like the Seiko's movement would potentially be worse. But anyway, playful dial, though. So again, while most of these watches are going to have fairly staid dials because dress watches, in my definition, need to be relatively conservative. This is still pretty conservative, I think. And nonetheless, playful with the patterning. So it's kind of got the stamped guilloche look to it that I think will appeal to a number of people. So I wanted to provide it as one of the alternatives. Now, Von Kroll, welcome to the live stream. No more NH30X/4R movements for him. I got rid of the last one recently. That's I'm not going to say that's interesting. Well, it is interesting. Everything you have done is interesting. But what I meant to say is I was going to say, I'm not sure if I was surprised or not. I've heard a lot more complaints about like the 6R line out of Seiko from people. I've never owned a 6. I've had 2 watches with a 4R in it, and I don't think I and that's it. I may have had some stuff in the past as well with the NH, with like the NH35 and such, but I don't anymore either, though I didn't get rid of them over the movements. So I guess I would ask, why do you just not, I mean, the Miyota 9000 series I see as broadly as a more respected movement, for example, but of course we don't get Miyotas and Seikos. So anyway, oh, well, and he is followed up with, not keen on any mechanical Seiko, really. Well, that is reason enough. Well, if you're not keen on Seiko, we can move on to my fourth watch on my dress watch suggestion sub 500. And that's Seagull. Why not consider a Chinese brand? So Seagull is known for their chronographs because they're like the most affordable mechanical chronographs out there. Not everyone, but a lot of people know the history about how the Chinese acquired some of the old Swiss manufacturers' movement technology, and that's why the movements they've been, even for decades, really, really robust without having to start from scratch, so to speak. But Seagull does do other watches besides chronographs and sports watches. They do have a small dress watch. They call it the business line, but that's their dress watch line. So my example here, and I think this is my cheapest watch I have for you. Maybe my Marlin will be will end on Timex, because again, I'm going alphabetically by brand. But this is what they call the names with Seagull are usually kind of like exactly whatever's on the tin. So this is the Seagull small triple hands, but it somewhat reminds me of like a marine watch you might see out of Stova or Laco, or basically a discount Calatrava would probably be a better example. But again, you've got the small seconds, pretty simple pencil hand look. So maybe you get some patrimony vibes out of it. Regardless, it's a very clean look. And this is mechanical as well. So I don't know if they list there. They use the ST17 movement. I am not familiar with that movement. I don't know. I have some Chinese movements, like in my Mr. Jones watches. I have one mechanic. That's a jump hour though, so it's not going to be the same movement per se, but it might be in the same family. I'd have to check which movement it was. But nonetheless, so you get, again, limited movement decoration. Actually is a little more decorated than what we would see out of Orient or Seiko. But nothing fancy here. Don't let the imagery fool you on this. I thought with the photos that this made the watch look kind of thick, but this actually is under 10 millimeters in diameter. Or yeah, it's approximately 10 millimeters in diameter, I should say. So a little bit bigger than the Seiko Presage in terms of its lug to lugs over 47 millimeters. But this is also about a 40 millimeter watch dial. So again, think more patrimony maybe than anything else. If you want a larger dress watch and you want something affordable, it might not be a bad idea to go ahead and take a look here. Varnkel says, I also don't like the ST1901. I'm just a grumpy Gus. Well, hey, we have to, if we have bad experiences with movements, it's good to point them out. And of course, we make our choices. I mean, I ditched an IWC Portuguese because it was a hand wind pocket watch style movement with baby's first crown. I mean, it was like the size of a pea. And it just was so hard to mechanically wind. I had to use a microcloth or my shirt to grip it if I wanted to fully wind it, because the torque just got too high for the size of that crown. And I don't know how that got out of quality control, but it did. And it was just a very, very strange thing. Killer Taxi says 8Ls and 6Ls are good. So he's referring to movements from Seiko. Veronkel says, actually, I had great luck with other Seagull movements. They're 6497 and 6498 clones, for example. And he did get an ST1901 watch once, and it broke immediately when I engaged the chronograph. I have heard a number of people. That actually is why I never really ended up exploring getting one of the first gen Studio Underdog chronographs, is because I started reading a lot of people would have the chronograph fail. And I had that happen on an H31, which is, if you don't know, that's like a Valjoux 77 5X base movement. And I had to send that in twice. And I've practically sworn off of mechanical chronographs because that so poisoned me to the experience. I do have one, and it's a Zenith, and it's held up okay, but at the price you would hope that it would. All right, so last of the sub 500 that I wanted to provide you. I mentioned it a little bit ago. So it is more than the Seagull, but it's again, most of my sub 500s I've given you are actually sub 400. And this is the Marlin. So the Marlin, actually, you can get some like peanut versions of the Marlin. There's some that are out of production as well that you can go if you want to explore smaller Marlins as well. This is actually another larger one, 40 millimeter watch. I've always liked the Marlin for its numerals, the Arabic numerals that they do at the 3, 6, 9, and 12. I think it's interesting, but I think it's tame enough that you can still consider this, especially when presented on a leather strap like the one I'm showing you, as a dress watch option. Timex, of course, is a very famous American brand. And so this, I looked at some of the other ones, like, again, you could even see off on the side. If you follow my link, it should go to this blue one, but you're able to go and you want to look. Once you put it on bracelet, I feel like you're playing more in a gotta watch, a go anywhere, do anything watch rather than a dress watch. So for me, all my dress watches are going to be on some form of leather or leather-esque strap. It won't be on a NATO. It won't be on a bracelet. So anyway, I do think it is a good option for people that maybe want something a little funkier, a little more vintage. Again, the example I have given you is mechanical. So of the 5 I've shown you in the sub 500, the only quartz I ended up using is the Citizen Serato, excuse me. But once again, basically no movement finishing, nor would you expect it, or nor should you expect it at this price point. But anyway, so there are 5 of the sub $500 ones that we could go and consider. So let me go ahead and get caught up with the chat, and then we will jump to the next price bracket. Vronkrol says, oh, wait, let me go back up one more because I see I missed Tuna's comment. The Tissot La Lutte, I knew how to say this once, and now I don't remember. The La Lutte, I'm going to stop. The Tissot must be in the $500 bracket. That is an attractive watch for the money. I actually did not include Tissot this time. I almost did, and I was going to look to see if they would go in my next bracket, but I ended up finding 5 other brands and went with them instead. So again, feel free to leave a comment on any I left out that you think I should have included, because I definitely left out a lot of brands, not to mention models. Bronco says, I think if the ST 1901 gets a proper service, it can work fine, but in cheaper watches, I believe those movements just get thrown together in great haste. Tuna notes that he also had bought a Seagull on AliExpress. It was dead on arrival. That is unfortunate to hear. I was just trying to include some brand diversity, folks. And Bronco says, okay, I've got nothing against the Marlin. We have a winner. All right, I've satisfied Bronco on at least one of my picks. Maybe you'll like some of my next picks. So let's jump up to the next bracket. So again, I think bracket slicing makes more sense to be narrow on the more affordable end, because what is expensive to people will vary. And I think there's a lot where if you're really unsure or you just want one and you don't want to put a lot of concern into it, sub $500 makes a lot of sense. And then there's more of what I'm going to call an enthusiast range, where not that the sub $500 are not for enthusiasts, but you probably are into watches to some degree if you're at the point where you're going to spend over $500 on one and you're actually looking for dress watches. So that suggests to me that you already have a watch. So now you're willing to spend $500 to $1,000 more on another watch, or at least that's what I'm presenting in my hypothetical that we're doing here. So let me go ahead. And again, the brands are alphabetical within the tiers. Archimedes, or Archimede, there's no S on it. Okay. I'm vaguely familiar with this brand. You're actually going to start seeing a few German brands show up at this point, because I've always been more interested, I would say, overall in German design. So I have a soft spot for them. So, but I don't really know this brand very well. So this is the 1950-1. They have a few other 1950s. In fact, I think I was looking at a 1950-4, but I couldn't get you under $1,000 on it. And I wanted to stay with this brand since they had so much that was under $1,000. So here you can see $943. This actually includes VAT. So if you're an American, you're going to get it for less than this. But I didn't want to, again, I had 25 brands. I couldn't spend all day doing a ton of research. So anyway, what do we have here? A fairly Calatrava-esque looking watch. Don't know if I'm a huge fan of it saying automatic towards the 6, but clearly they felt like they needed to balance their simplistic branding up at the top. Date at the 3 o'clock, pretty common for dress watches that happen to run with a date complication. Does have central seconds, which again, I tried to find you one where we had small seconds, but we'll explore some more small second options later. So don't feel too bad about this one. But again, there are a lot of dress watches that run with a central seconds hand. So if you like this, I'm going to call it Calatrava-esque look. It's missing some of the other refinements, obviously, that you would expect, but I think it's a pretty good looking watch overall. There is a good doming to the crystal as well. I don't think that first image really showed you very well. So I do think this looks like a relatively attractive watch. The handset is, I guess, leaf style, so less Calatrava and think more Portuguese. I kind of associate the style with that. But again, automatic movement, no real finishing to speak of. A little bit. There's some striping and stuff that exists. So, but it's not. I'm not going to say it's notably a step above what we talked about in the sub $500 brand. The watch itself, I was trying to remember exactly what the sizing is. This actually uses a Miyota 9015, which again, the 9000. I do have a 9000 series Miyota in a Baltic, which is another brand I probably should have included, but I did not. But so I'm familiar with that. And then the size here, I was trying to find that 39 millimeters in diameter, plexiglass crystal. So that may be a turnoff for some of you, but you would be able to polish it, unlike the mineral glass stuff, which would be more difficult to work with. And 9.8 millimeters of thickness. That's the other. I was trying to make sure what the sizing was. That's one of the other reasons I wanted to include a watch like this. I think dress watches are at their best when they are thin. And so sub 10 millimeters is something I really do like to try and find in a watch, especially if it's a watch that's trying to be dressy rather than sporty. So anyway, I thought this one was worth having a conversation about. Tuna says the Marlin is pretty good. Timex have upped their game. That is back to their prior. Vronkroll says, oh, the hands and dial curve down retro style. Sure, this is fine. Yes, they do have a bit of the. I don't know why this picture is now blue. I've screwed everything up. I don't know what's going on. But yes, they do have that downward curve. When I first saw that on watches, when I was working on watches, like servicing them over the pandemic, like old ones, I thought that I had accidentally bent the hands and stuff. And then I realized that was actually a style thing that was really much more common back then. But it's really fun, especially at the edge with the distortion that you see on that. So, all right. So that's Archimedes. Let's go ahead and jump to Hamilton. All right. I had a couple options here. We could do the Ventura or we could do the Jazzmaster. I don't really think you can do a lot else. And I try not to get too wild with the case designs and stuff because I'm trying to put myself in the head of someone who's after a dress watch. And they probably want something relatively traditional. We'll get a little funkier depending on the brand later on, like in terms of complication and stuff. I didn't follow really, really strict rules, as you can already see. I've included certain complications like dates. And some people are such purists, they wouldn't even want a secondhand. And I've tried to give you examples where we don't have those things, but in some instances, we're going to have some of this stuff. So this one I went with because up until this point, I don't think I've really given you, maybe the Bambino had some Roman numerals, but I want to give you some big Roman numerals because some people want Roman numerals on a watch. Not very many people, but some people do. So this one actually has a Roman numeral for every single position. So you get the watchmaker's 4 o'clock, which I always thought was the weirdest thing when I first got into watches to see. Comes on a leather strap. A lot of the Jazzmasters actually break my rule on pricing. You see, I was really cutting it close here. This is $995 MSRP currently on Hamilton's website. That still counted. Now, if I went into quartz, I think I could have been safer. And I think there were Jazzmasters in quartz. I know there are Venturas in quartz, but I went ahead and was able to give you a mechanical movement in this case. I'm trying to remember if this is the power. It's the H10. Okay, so it's the H10, but it's this 80-hour power reserve, kind of Powermatic 80 style thing that we're sort of familiar with. So again, next to no movement decoration. But if you want really easy to read numerals, this watch offers it to you, but in the classical Roman format. Plus, this is the first watch I believe I've shown you today that is Swiss made. It does matter to some people to see Swiss made on the dial. You will see that down at the 6 o'clock. So, Hamilton, I mostly associate with field watches. I'm not familiar very strongly with the Jazzmaster line. Most of my visual experience with them are open hearts, which I do not like and I do not think are really meet the dress watch. I'll allow a lot of complications. I think open hearts too far though. Or maybe it's just that I don't like open hearts and I just couldn't bring myself to give them to you. But this actually is a 40 millimeter watch also. So again, larger wrist individuals. We normally like to go smaller for dress watch than we do sports watches. So even people with larger wrists would probably, I would assume, be like, well, if I wear a 45 millimeter sports watch, I'd be okay with a 40 millimeter dress watch. But they probably would want that rather than a 35, 36 millimeter, which is more, I guess, traditional to a lot of people. My personal preferred size for dress watches is more 38, 39 millimeter, kind of, or 36 to 39, I guess would be my range. But Anyway, I thought it was interesting. I think it looks pretty good overall too. I like the we're getting a little more interest with the dial as well. You have this sort of bead blasted look to the center area, and then the more matte look around the exterior where they have the numerals listed. So, thoughts from you all who are watching. Von Kroll says, I don't mind the California style dial, actually. Roman numerals at top, Arabic below. I do not like California dials personally, so I almost never show them as in terms of recommendations. Joel Bolt says, I'd be interested to hear your top 5 or 10 Roman numeral watches. I'd actually have to sit and think about it because I don't know how I'd answer it. So I'll think about that for a future one. Ron says, but all Roman is generally a no for me. I know it's a no for a lot of people. I'm okay with it. I usually like them smaller, though. This is not a watch I would buy, but I thought it was interesting, and I want to give some diversity versus just what my own opinion would be. Tuna says, Hamilton makes some excellent choices. I like the two-handed Intramatic, a nice minimalist style, and a good hangover from the 60s. That's an interesting one to suggest. I had not thought about that. Bronco says, I'm at about a 20 centimeter wrist size, and I think 39 millimeters is a perfect size for a dressy piece. Yeah, all of my current dress watches that I own, I believe, are 38s or 39s. I think that's it. I think I just have those two ranges. Tuna says, Hamilton do a lot of choices in 38 millimeters. And Joe, who's late, but he's catching the back half. Well, we're actually only about a fourth of the way through. I'll try and pick up the speed. I see what you mean because of the timing. It's already almost half past, and I'm not moving quick enough. But anyway, I want to go ahead and suggest this one. I figure the more affordable watches are going to be more interesting to most people anyway. But we're kind of going in. We're going in price order by tier, but then within each tier, the brands are alphabetized. Why I do it that way, I don't know. That's just the way my brain works. All right, so Young Hans. I don't like Bajas in wristwatches as a general rule. However, some people really like it. And if you want Bajas, Young Hans is the place you should start if you want to explore more affordable watches. Now, Young Hans is not an inexpensive brand. I don't think you can really find anything noteworthy under $500 new MSRP. Again, that's the pricing we're using. This is going to be about $950. The 855 euro is going to convert to about 950 US. But here is an example. I couldn't find you an MSRP Young Hans, or at least when I looked on the current website, new for under 1,000 US mechanical, but I could find you one quartz. Now, I've looked at some other Young Hans watches, some of their quartz powered stuff, in fact, but I've never pulled the trigger on one myself. But I think this is very interesting. It actually is fairly busy for a Baja style, which I like more than the more minimalist look. You do have a date complication, so take it or leave it in terms of if you like having that there. But it's relatively color matched, obviously, because we've kind of gone with an opaline dial here. I think it's sort of a silvery white, so that's why I'm saying that. Again, another German brand that I wanted to present, but it leans. Nomos has some very nice Bajas approaches too, obviously at a significantly higher price point. But Young Hans, I feel, is more authentic to the look. They also tend to do a lot with that vintage styling of plexiglass on a lot of their watches. In fact, I'm assuming this is plexi, but I had not actually looked. Nope, this is actually sapphire, and they just have it looking like a plexi. So again, for the pricing, you probably are more pleased with that than if it was a sub $500 watch. You'd be more forgiving. It's anti-reflective. This is only 8 millimeters thick, actually 7.9. That's what I wanted to look up. So again, being quartz helps with that. So very, very thin watch, 39 millimeter diameter sizing, so quite wearable for most people, and in that range that I think a lot of us are most comfortable with on having a dress watch. So again, Young Hans, not a style I personally would ever buy, but if anyone ever asks me and says they indicate anything to me where it suggests they like Bajas, this is a brand I like to point them to. And I tell them, look at the Max bill specifically. The other Young Hans lines are not all Bajas. They're not quite like Nomos, where it feels very samey in terms of dial approach for most of their watches. Young Hans actually has some pretty disparate lines, but this is the most famous for a lot of people and is the go-to to talk about when we talk dress watches. Let's see. Franco says, going 40 millimeter and above feels a bit wrong for a dress watch, even with my largerish wrist size. And he says he's never had a Bauhaus watch, but he does like this particular dial layout. And it's even more appealing with sapphire and thus it is a young Hans that he would consider. Yeah, actually, when I saw the distortion here, I thought this had to be plexi. I know you can accomplish sapphire that has that same warm kind of feel, but I just assumed at the sub $1,000 price point that we wouldn't see it. But I was wrong. I am pleasantly surprised. Also, for us, pleasantly surprised by Mito. Mito, which I normally think of with their, big date TV style watches and stuff. Well, they do actually have kind of a dress watch line, the Belluna Royal. They have a women's one and a men's one. The gents are the ones that are oriented to men. This is big. So I wouldn't buy this. I personally, this is almost 42 millimeters in diameter, 41.8. But if you want something really big, here's the biggest one I've shown you so far. So 41.8 millimeters, 80-hour mechanical power reserve, much like you'd expect out of this. I'm not a huge fan of this because the movement clearly is much smaller than the case, but they're not going to make a movement the proper size for a watch at this price bracket. You get 50 meters of water resistance on the watch, though, which is better than most of the dress watches I've been showing you today. So again, it's different look. It reminds me of the Presage in a lot of ways, but you're going to go with a movement maybe you like better. You get more power reserve at least than the 4R. Date window here, not color matched. It would probably have looked weird color matched with the texturing that's going on anyway across the dial. But it's the texturing that kind of caught my eye. This is, again, a more playful dress watch for someone that's looking for something not quite so conservative. But, for me, too big. I'll say if your wrist size is like 8 plus 8.5 inches, maybe you might actually like this quite a bit. I don't know. Or you could, consider it something in the way more sporty. They actually, again, if you look over here on the side, it's hard to see if you're on a phone or something. I'll give you an example. It's still sub $1,000, but I don't show bracelet watches as dress watches. I don't think bracelets are configurations of dress watch. In most cases, we'll make exceptions for things like the ellipse and such from Patek if you're doing like a really elegant bracelet, but this will really sportify it. But you see how much difference a strap can make. So they do have bracelet configurations. So someone might want it more in a sports setup. You can do it. I wanted to go ahead and point that out. Tuna says above 40 millimeters is too over the top for a dress watch. For me, yes. However, for some people, they probably can make it. It may look relatively diminutive. So I don't want to rule it entirely out. All right, last one in the sub $1,000 range that I wanted to talk about was Stova. I looked at Laco as well, but I could not get you at least when I looked, I didn't easily find a marine format. They both do marine format watches that was sub $1,000, but I can do it with Stova. Stova is a brand I've owned before. Like Laco, they're best known for fleekers. However, they both do marine style watches. Now, again, to give you some more Roman numerals, I have given you a Roman numeral configuration. They do have Arabic numeral configurations as well. I just think the handset is really, elegant would be the way I would go with it. And given the way these hands look, they're fairly bourgeoisie style hands. And because of that, I think they lend themselves well to the Roman numerals. So that's why I picked this particular configuration. These are powered by SW200s. I know a lot of people do not like the SW200, but again, that is when I've gone with this automatic base movement. If you go and switch it to a hand wind, it's a question of it becomes the SW210. So maybe the problem I know some people have with the SW200 is that it sometimes doesn't like being hand wound all the time because it's an automatic movement watch. Well, you can get the hand wind configuration. I believe I had the SW210 I had some SW, maybe it was another older movement in my Flieger, which was a hand wind only. And again, we keep the price. This would be about $950 US. So we keep the price down even we go to the top grade hand wind only movement approach. But again, it's I really like the look of these watches. I know there's a channel viewer who owns one of these Marines. I think it's a Stova that they own, in fact. And they really like it quite a bit. Also, I want to note with those and with my experience with Stova, the movement finishing at this point has stepped up. And all of my other sub $1,000 examples, I don't really think the movement finishing is very interesting. I think Stova's movement finishing is worth a display case back. And so it's a brand that you generally have to order direct from Stova or buy used. So it's not one we see around as much as, say, Laco, but I do think it's a good brand that's really worth exploring. So Trap Vision, good morning. Glad you were able to make it. Tuna says the Ellipse is a fascinating watch. President Trump approves. Well, the Ellipse will not be in the list today, but Patek will be. And Tuna is saying hello back to Trap. Okay, so we've done the sub $500 5 dress watch examples from 5 different brands, and we've just done the $500 to $1,000. So now we're moving into the expensive watches. So I've got 3 more brackets to get through for you. My next tier, again, instead of going in a $500 range, we're going to go in a $5,000 range. Well, $4,000 range. We're going to go from $1,000 to $5,000. There's a lot of dress watch in this space now. A lot of Swiss-made things that become up to play. A lot of brands that are known as luxury brands that have options for you. So again, I've tried to provide some diversity here in terms of just different formats, different approaches, and you can kind of explore what you might want. So I'm going to start with one brand that you might not think of readily, because I still to this day only think of ink pens when I hear of them, and that's Mont Blanc. So Mont Blanc has 2 price ladders. They're both luxury. The Minerva branded stuff is super expensive. And then there's the regular stuff, which is much more in that what a lot of people will use the phrase entry level luxury, like think competitive with Tudor sorts of stuff. So this example here is the Star Legacy automatic. I may have checked. I'm trying to remember if I've seen this one in person. I might have. I don't think I saw this dial color. But again, this is big. This is a 42 millimeter watch. So I would not be interested in this myself. But if you have a larger wrist size, we're starting to see a lot more texturing going on in terms of the patterning, which is probably stamped, but nonetheless, the guilloche style look to it, I think, is visually interesting, especially how they take the Mont Blanc logo, which is that kind of star logo, and they have all the patterning emanate out from that for the center of the dial. Again, this kind of looks a lot like that Hamilton I showed you. We can, let me zoom back out, and then let me jump back so you have a comparison. The Jazzmaster, see that we have this texturing, but it's much simpler here than if we jump over back to the Mont Blanc, and it gets a lot more elaborate. You have to really zoom in to start to see the texturing detail to it. Again, we have the Roman numerals all the way around the dial. With the handset, I think it makes a lot of sense. Date window down at the 6, so that's probably more acceptable to a lot of people that maybe want a date but don't want it at the 3 o'clock, which, well, the 3 o'clock is a pretty traditional spot for dress watches that have date windows. Our mileage may vary, and while it's not particularly creative to have one at the 6, it's definitely not offensive. Movement finishing, I actually think, is not as impressive as what we've seen on the Stova we just talked about at the lower price tier. But that's just how it be when you start buying watches from people that make ink pens. So anyway, too big in my opinion. Just under $3,000. This is $2,950. So this one falls kind of in the middle of my $1,000 to $5,000 one, but we're starting with it because everything is alphabetical by brand once we go into the tiers, as I've said before. So Mont Blanc M was my first brand that I had for you all. Arthur, welcome to Livestream, said, bought a 37 millimeter Grand Seiko, $5,000 with a 9F quartz and snowflake dial. Gorgeous piece and so refined. Hard to see what else I could need in a dress watch without paying serious money for a gold case, etc. Grand Seiko will be making an appearance on this list. I actually put them up in the next bracket, and I had to kind of work at it to get them that high. And Patrick with Pocket Watch Time, hello to you. All right, let's jump to the second of my 5 watches in the $1,000 to $5,000 dress watch tier that I would suggest for people to look at. Let's go smaller. Let's go 35 millimeter. Let's go Nomo Sklashuta, another German brand. Bauhaus-esque, a lot of Bauhaus inspiration in their watch dials. I'm not going to say they're more playful than Junghans. I will say I feel like they have a different design language within the Bauhaus space. I'm not a Bauhaus wristwatch fan. I mentioned that when we talked Junghans, and that's the case here too. I would never own this watch myself. However, if you like that look and you want something different and are willing to pay more than what Junghans has in the max bill, this is not a bad place to go. And I actually say look at all across Nomos, but I'm using the Tangente for my particular example here. As I mentioned, this watch is 35 millimeters in diameter, but as you can see with these photos, these have very long lugs, and those lugs piss a lot of people off. So again, there's going to be controversy to a lot of these picks, and that's why I'm giving you different options, because some people like these lugs. A lot of people do not. They're very large. But it gives a lot, as you can see, a lot of wrist presence to the watch, which otherwise is a pretty small dial. So polarizing case shape, worthy of discussion, though, because of that. And so this person, as you can see, 7.3-inch wrist is what this wrist that we're looking at has on here. And here's the example on a 5.7-inch wrist. So you get a sense of small person's wrist, and then a larger 7.3 inches, almost the average male wrist size. I believe the average male wrist size is 7.25 inches. My wrist size is 6.75, for example. So to me, I try and imagine myself between these two. But I like that they list this. Another thing I will point out is sapphire crystal. This is standard, 30 millimeters water resistance. Pencil hands, kind of patrimony-esque in that regard. Small seconds, which I haven't been showing you a lot of small seconds lately. But the movement finishing, this is why I've always wanted to like Nomos, and I'm so disappointed that I just can't get excited about any of their models for me. But their movements look great, and at the price point that they operate in, this is some very nice movement finishing. In-house calibers. This one's powered by the DUW4001. And anyway, pricing $2,120 US. So this is cheaper than the Mont Blanc. A very interesting watch. You can find all sorts of different configurations and stuff. Also, the thickness here, I think, is very, very modest. I should have memorized. Well, it's been too hard to memorize it. 6.2 millimeters. I don't own a watch this thin in my entire collection. I think my smallest watches are about 7.5 millimeters. 6.2 is, for a non-quartz, this is very, very thin. That's very modest. But again, the lug's 45 millimeters because of how big those lugs are. So it's if you want a thin watch, this is one of the, and you don't want quartz. Again, if you can get into the $1,000, $5,000 price bracket, this is a brand that I would say consider, but you got to get behind their dial design, which not everyone can. You got to get behind their case configuration with those lugs. And a lot of people cannot get behind that. In fact, we're seeing them in the comments. Von Curl says, I'm not sure I can get along with that with a case like this. Patrick, not a fan of those lugs. Many people are not a fan of the lugs. Arthur, Nomos kills me. I love most of their watches, but the lugs are awful. Trap, Nomos is a really nice brand. He thinks the lugs are fine. I need to try one on. Well, I don't need to try one on because while I think I'm okay with the lugs, I can't get behind the Bauhaus look. So I don't want the dial on my wrist is my problem. Ronco says, I may never try that because the lugs do look all wrong to me. Best guess, I would not get along with them, but Nomos has a few that I'd consider. Their new World Timer, that one no longer, it's got different lugs, and it also is not in the Bauhaus aesthetic. So I could see that if I was into World Timers. Potentially, that's what was revealed at Watches and Wonders this year, but it's not a dress watch. I in good conscience, could not include it today. Koji says, 39 millimeter Nomos Orion was my first and for a long, merciful time only serious watch. The long lugs never bothered me, and it was comfortable on the wrist. Arthur says, don't 100% hate the lug design, but lugs like that rub against my wrist bone and feel uncomfortable. Comfort should always be a priority. I do not wear an uncomfortable watch. It's just terrible. I had a Ming like that where the crown was uncomfortable. Koji says, the Horween Cordovan strap it comes with is a nice additional plus. Good point to add. Thank you. All right, next. We spent too much time on that. All right, Omega. Honestly, I should have put Omega in the next price tier, but I knew I could find something under $5,000. Currently, from looking at Omega's website, for men, there are 5 watches that are under 5,000 MSRP. Again, what we can do gray is different, but Omega is a very respected brand. And every time I criticize Omega, I get a comment with either someone getting upset with the criticism of Omega or wanting to slag off on some other brand that they, because they want to make a point. I don't know, which is fine. Y'all have your own taste. So here you go. I wanted so much. If you love Omega, I wanted to give you something MSRP as affordable as I could. And this is the best I could do. Is I can get you in just under 5,000 in a dress watch show. At $4,800, I can get you a DeVille Prestige. The Prestige, actually, you can get them on bracelet versions under 5,000 as well. In fact, I think they've got one that's even under a couple under $4,000. But I liked the way this one looked. Color match date window. So I want to give it kudos for that. Roman numerals, but not all over the dial, just in the strategic even number positions. And then you've got this nice little dots otherwise. So I think it's just a really nice classical look. It looks good on the strap. And you get the coaxial movement. I've never been a huge fan of this movement finishing, but it is better than other models in the price range, like Tudors, for example. So, and it's an interesting movement. So the movement tech is interesting. I just think it's very interesting to look at. But anyway, I want to go ahead and throw one in here. Your options in the DeVille line, which is their main dress watch line, greatly expand if you're willing to go over $5,000. But there are a few available sub 5,000 MSRP if you want to explore that. All right. So Trap says, I've never tried one on, so I can only judge by looks only. He's referring back to the Nomos we were discussing. Tuna says, the cheap DeVille is a nice enough watch. They are very nice. Like this, again, the renders may not do it justice. The watches, I ain't giving you no ugly watches. Like there are watches I would not own, and I'm telling you if I wouldn't own them for whatever reason. But I do think these are good watches to consider for ownership. And so I do think this one would look really, really good. And it's a nice unisex option, in my opinion. Incidentally, the size on this is 40 millimeters, though. So some women like to wear larger watches, but bear in mind, I'd not pick this again is kind of towards that bigger end for a dress watch. And Arthur says, nice pick for the ladies, this one. I think so. There are also smaller ones that may be, if they don't like a larger watch, that they may want to go ahead and explore. All right, how about Rado? Again, another brand I only think of for sports watches, but the Florence line actually is a dress watch aesthetic, 39 millimeter in diameter. This is not gold. This is, I'm assuming, some form of PVD. There's no way you're getting a gold watch for $1,650 US. But yeah, it's got an automatic movement still. It's nothing super duper to write home about, but again, some people want the gold tone. And I realized while I was building these out, I hadn't given you an option. You can find Bambinos and stuff. So if you want to get things under $500 with a gold tone, you can do that. Same with Seiko. Like there's some Seiko quartz tanks and stuff too, if you want like a rectangular watch. But anyway, I was kind of surprised. I loaded Rado up and I thought I was going to dismiss them really, really quickly. And then I saw that they actually had something, and it was just over $1,000. So I had to put them in the third tier, but I don't know. I thought the texturing on the dial also was really interesting because you've got it's diagonal lines, but they're all in quadrants. So each one slashes a different way. It's an interesting, playful look. Would I own this? No, I'm not into this, but interesting lug configuration with the straps too. It's, again, I almost like the women's configuration. It's not really any different. Maybe a better option for ladies, or I think that they might find more use in this. But obviously, it's designed for to be unisex. So anyway, I thought it was interesting. So I wanted to go ahead and mention it, even though it's not for me. Arthur says, strange looking lugs and inlinks, but still better than Nomos. Yeah, it's weird. It almost feels like they wanted to do like a quasi integrated thing going on. And maybe that's how the straps work. And you just snap them into this and you can get different straps. Again, you can kind of see off to the side. They have this in a bracelet configuration, but I did not think this style of bracelet warranted me covering it in a dress watch discussion. But here's kind of what they were trying to go for. If you want to see this, again, this kind of reminds me of some of the ceramic Rados that they have, like the rectangles and stuff. Like this is like this dial configuration and like the Jubilee. So they're doing the Jubilee look. But anyway, not my personal pick, but Tuna says, I once came close to buying a Rado dress watch. They are nice enough. For me, if I'm going Rado, I'd probably go something ceramic. And Patrick said, Vacheron stole that dial design on their newest watch. Didn't like it either. Okay. Well, the last in the 1,000, 5,000. I owned this watch. I owned it on bracelet, which made it more of a Gata watch, but I tried to find a different dial colorway that came on strap. At this time, they're only offering the Opaline. I own the Opaline dial, but the 1926. I like the 1926. I like it for a few reasons. One, I'm showing you a 41 millimeter version, but you can get it in 36, 39. I think they have something sub 36, and then they have the 41. So it's a lot of different sizes. So good option for men or women. Third party eBosch movement. They do make some modifications to the movement. Salida, I believe at this point, it used to be Edda's. Waffle pattern is the staple to all of the colorways. So you get like the leaf hands, you get the waffle pattern, you get the smiley face logo from the old days, not Roman numerals, you get Arabic numerals at all the even positions. So this is kind of Tudor's version of the date just. But on strap, I think it's a reasonably dressy option. It also is one of the more affordable Tudors. At this example is 2,175 MSRP. It's a little bit more if you get it on strap. They have some versions with diamonds on the dial that are a little bit more than that. But it's also very, very thin watch. I don't know if they list the thickness here. Yeah, 9.3 millimeters. And that's true for all the sizes. And this is the biggest size that they've got. Also, a nice change up for most of the watches I've shown you. This is 100 meters of water resistance. So if you want a dress style watch and you're one of those people that does not trust anything that is less than 100 meters of water resistance, you're often fairly limited. But again, because of the way this watch is actually designed to be either on bracelet or on strap, it's meant to be robust. Again, Datejust-esque. I just had too many other watches that filled the function of the 1926, so I sold mine. But actually, this blue also, it's not heat blued. These are coated. It plays with the light better than heat blue. So again, I know a lot of people really like heat blue, and heat blue, I mean, it's harder to do, and it's a more subtle effect though. This is very playful in the light. I wish again that they had some shots of it and that weren't really renders, but these are almost iridescent in the light, and the numerals are the same way as the hand. So very, very shiny when the light catches it. So anyway, I liked it, but obviously I didn't like it enough to keep it. Tuna says, I suppose you can't really knock the 1926, but it hardly gets the juices flowing. I mean, you could not like the waffle pattern very much. You could not like the date being at the 3 o'clock very much. You might think the way that the logo and the self-winding aspects are applied and not in the waffle texture are a little disconcerting. There are a few things that I think you could poke at it, but it wears really well. And I think that the hands and numerals in the light make up for a lot of it. Joel Bolt notes that he actually really loves this Tudor. All right, we're moving along. I've got not a whole lot of time left, and I've got 10 watches left to go. But now we're getting to the really expensive stuff where most people are probably not readily making purchases. But I want to give you ideas if you are serious, like getting hardcore about wanting a dress watch. And so I want to give you some options. So let's go ahead and start with Cartier. Yeah, let's do a tank, but let's not do the usual tank. Actually, if you want like the more traditional tank, we could get back under the $5,000 tier. And you could get back into the $1,000 to $5,000 range, especially with the quartz watches. Even with the price increases that Cartier has done, you can get in at Cartier pretty low on pricing. However, if you're starting to go, you want to spend more like $5,000 to $10,000. Why not look at the Tank American? It's actually a really interesting shape, very elongated. So it's more, in my mind, is a more graceful look than the regular tank. If you're more into the regular tank, I start to think JLC and Reversos. Personally, I like those better. I actually don't have JLC in the list today. I ended up finding other brands instead. But I do think the Tank American is a very interesting watch, and it's towards the lower end of this price tier at $6,250 US. Okay, let's go back to Germany. Unfortunately, Glashütte Original, most of their watches are going to be MSRP over $10,000. And the problem is, at that point, with the way I was doing my brackets, we're going to have A. Lange in competition. And it's like, it wasn't going to work. Like Geo wasn't going to win in most of the battles that I was going to put it up against. However, if you go into their vintage collection, they have a few choices. And one of the things that I always thought was really interesting, much like if we jump all the way back to the sub $500 brand and these numerals on the Timex Marlin. Well, if you want the luxury version of that, take a look at the Glashütte Original 1960s. You've got, again, very playful, very 60s numeral. So if you're wanting something where the dial design looks vintage with a sort of this avant-garde feel to it, here you go. This is priced at $7,500 US. So it is not a cheap watch. It's kind of smack in the middle of my, $5,000 to $10,000 bracket here. Calfskin strap. Again, I think that lends it to the vintage aesthetic. Obviously, we're staying with stainless steel to keep this pricing. You can find these. I was just going to note it, even though I'm focusing on MSRP here. You can find these in different colorways and such used at decent discounts. So, and they do have chronographs as well. I avoided chronographs on the dress watch. It was a complication too far for me. I feel we're getting too fancy for what I wanted. Again, I wanted to make certain assumptions. We are going to get into some more complications in the higher price tier where you could argue that I got too playful, which is fair enough. But I did deliberately not choose any chronographs. Not to mention, I don't know if I could have stayed under $10,000 even with the 60s in the chronograph. I'd have to take a look. But let me go ahead and get caught up with the chat here. We've got Ben 10. Welcome to the live stream. Joe Bolt talking about the American that I showed. Also love the American. Now, now I'm browsing. Yeah, yes. There's much to look at. Arthur says, love the domed crystal on the Geo. Yes, the crystal look and that vintage warmth to it is something. I like the 70s as well, but all the 70s in the current line are chronographs. They're also not really dress watches. I think the 60s can work as a dress watch. Ben 10 says the Glashütte Original 60s chrono is so dope. Yes, it's a very cool looking chronograph, and they have a number of them available currently in production. Killer Taxi says Geo 60s keeps tempting me. Awesome watch. I've looked at a number of them used on Chrono 24 as well. I just don't know if I'd wear it enough, so I've avoided pulling the trigger. Ben says the 39 millimeter Glashütte would wear like a 40 or 41 millimeter. And yes, again, I've offered a lot of bigger watches. And we could debate whether this would be an ideal dress watch, but I'm trying to give people some of their potential personalities in my examples. Tina says, I think the 60s is a beautiful watch, expensive for what it is, though I think MSRP on Geo is too high for what they really command in the market. But hey, their loss is our gain because people sell almost all the Geos at significant discounting if you're willing to consider used, or I don't know how readily available they are, gray market. All right, let me jump to the third watch here because I'm running out of time. Grand Seiko. So actually, Grand Seiko is a better competitor in the $1,000 to $5,000 price point. They're actually in the Elegance collection, which I feel is kind of their most dressy collection. That's debatable. They have a lot that's under $5,000, so I probably should have stuck them there. But there are a few, especially some of their limited editions that get in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. Again, staying outside of gold, I went with this, the SBGA 293. So it's $5,200. So it's barely in this higher bracket. Spring drive. It does have the spring drive power reserve indicator on the dial side. I think that's the more practical place to put it. But I know some people don't like that, and there are plenty of Grand Seikos that they hide it on the back, so you don't have to look at the power reserve. I just like the cream ivory dial, the grammar of design language, which you can find in all sorts of Grand Seikos. It's their design language. It's really, really attractive. It's a very clean dress watch look. And overall, I just think this is a really nice looking watch. I think spring drive's a really interesting movement. This is on a gator strap. So, I mean, we're at the price point now where we're starting to get into exotic leathers for the straps. Anyway, there are plenty of other more interesting, like exciting dials if you're into that. But if you want something staid, here is an example that I want to go ahead and present to you. All right, number 4 in this bracket, Portugueser from IWC. All right, you could go Portofino as well, but the Portuguese line is the more famous line from IWC. The brand's mostly known for pilot watches. However, the Portuguese line, I'd say, is their second most famous brand. I used to own a Portuguese. It's a very nice watch. I talked about the problems with my hand wind experience. However, modern Portuguesers do not use pocket watch movements. They use wristwatch style movements, so they're easier to wind. And a lot of them, like this, are automatic. $7,300. It is pretty expensive. It's a 40 millimeter watch, a 40.5 almost, 40.4. But the Portuguese is designed to be big. And sometimes it used to be called the Portuguese, and they renamed it the Portuguese. So I'm going to kind of interchange the two words. But very nice movement finishing. This is a very nice watch, and if you like this dial look, it's such a clean look. I really like this. I love the leaf hands on the Portuguesers. The small seconds with the blued hand, and this against the gold colored handset and numerals, Arabic numerals as well. So if you don't like Romans, IWC is a great brand for Arabic numerals. This is I've really thought about going back into IWC and getting something. Probably for me, I'd look more into a case at precious metal personally, because I favor that for dress watches. But this is a very nice looking watch, and if you prefer steel, I would say this is definitely a model line to take a look at. And then Zenith. All right, Zenith's known for chronographs, but they do have a few kind of dress watch style stuff. Here at $7,200 is their Elite Moonface. So first time I've given you a Moonface complication. It's a pretty funky looking watch, but at its core, I feel this is a dress watch aesthetic. So I've gone ahead and I've presented it here for you. It's 40.5 millimeters. So again, it's on the larger side. They don't have a whole lot in this line currently. So if you look used, you could probably find some other stuff. But nonetheless, I think it's fairly interesting. All right, I got a book, so we got to go a little bit quicker. All right, so let's say you want to spend big dollars. Let's go 10,000 on up, and it actually nothing's over 50,000, so that's why I'm doing it the way I am. The longer one, what I'm wearing today, although this is the modern reference, expensive, yes, $47,000 MSRP. These take a bath secondhand, definitely look used. But I was going to give you one with a moon face, but it kicked it up over $50,000. So $47,000. You got a whole lot of different colorways: rose gold, white gold, platinum. It's going to be over 50 with platinum. But nonetheless, with the complications, the golden ratio, all of that, this is my favorite dress watch design that exists, period. So it's my personal favorite. My money is where my mouth is on it. The modern ones look great. Breguet, another, you thought Longa took a bath. Breguet takes even more of one. If you want a discount on something, very, very traditional designs. The Classique line is my favorite. A lot of people like the tradition, so I'd say you can give that a consideration. Here's the 5157. It retails at $24,300. I think you're going to find this over half off used if you go that route. This is a white gold version, only hours and minute hands, Roman numerals instead of Breguet numerals. But I think it looks really good in this. And what was this? A hobnail hand guilloche on a rose engine turn lathe. So a lot of watchmaking in Breguet. Definitely a good one to consider, especially if you want to see the watchmaking dial side. Patek Calatrava, obviously. I'm showing you the 6196P001, the new one they released this year at Watches and Wonders in platinum. It is in platinum. It's $49,444. We got it in under the 50,000. But the movement better fits the case now. I think this is a really Patek doesn't modernize very well, but I think this with the blackened markers and hands and such looks really, really good with the salmon dial in the platinum case. I think this is like, if this wasn't so much, this would definitely be a watch I would want to get. Piaget, again, more playful, very iridescent, like a Vacheron Overseas almost style to their blue here. But again, time only, just baton markers, pencil hands, no seconds hands whatsoever. A very true dress watch, and Piaget makes their watches very, very thin. This retails at $23,100, so it's actually one of the more affordable ones that I'm showing you today. It's just a little bit less than the Breguet I showed you at MSRP. And sorry, I'm talking so quick. Finally, Patrimony. I'm not a huge Patrimony fan. I don't really like the pencil hands on most of the traditional Patrimonies. If you're going to go Patrimony, though, all right, $49,400, go retrograde. The retrogrades are cool with that handset, in my opinion. This is a retrograde date. So the days of the week are a retrograde. The date is a retrograde. And then you have hours and minutes, no seconds, hands whatsoever. So anyway, there you go. Sorry I had to go really quick on the expensive stuff, but most of you, if you're into that, you've already been looking at them anyway. I have a plan, so I have to take off. I hope you enjoyed this. 25 watches, 5 different price tiers, 5 per tier, all different brands. I could try and do this with other categories besides dress watches if you want. Let me know if you thought the format was any good or not. And that's it for now. I will talk to you all on the next one. Sorry I'm speaking so quickly. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care. Have a good weekend.